This is the Non-Tech Podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture, with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us. Anyway, we'll loop that part of it out with Camtasia because that's what the first 5 seconds are for. Hello everybody, Matt Stranick here with you for the second of our series of exclusive, very, awesome, very, it's interview-esque, but we're calling them conversations. So we had the newly minted Dr. Lee Smith just about a week back, and now we are joined by Calgary Workland School of Education doctoral candidate. You have reached candidates to sea level, and this is also a very awesome former colleague, and we're Facebook buddies and whatever else, and I've just sort of known Kara. We both worked at a former institution, Thompson Rivers, because that's where it was. And I was just, she came into the teaching unit. We struck up some kind of conversation. And then every time there was an event that they or a workshop or whatever that they facilitated, because they had various offerings, and I, as a aspiring faculty member at the time, did go to check out some of those. And every time it was always just a really dynamic, fun, kind of vibe to the thing, which isn't always, the norm sometimes in higher education generally. It's been my experience. So it was always a highlight. And, Kara has subsequently moved on to other roles. She's been really carving a very strong path in terms of leadership, and you are now within the leadership stream at Calgary, right, where we both attended. We are both within the EdD, right? You're doing the EdD as opposed to the PhD route. So now that I've kind of just wound up the whole shooting match ahead of our conversation, thanks a lot for joining us, and I'm really pleased that we have the next however long you care to stick around for a conversation.
Thank you, Matt. I'm really happy to be here. Honored to be asked, and always delighted to talk about higher education and also my doctoral project.
That's fantastic. Well, I guess first of all, you've had a pretty extensive career. I did what anybody would do in my situation. I had a, cursory glance at your LinkedIn before, at some point this afternoon. But I guess just sort of generally for the folks out there who might not even know what a LinkedIn is, you want to maybe just give us kind of an overview of your career such to the point that it has led you to where you are now. And you can go about that to whatever extent you want.
All right, I'm gonna start by saying that I studied at the University of Saskatchewan. I have 2 undergraduate degrees from there, and in my first undergraduate degree, I majored in Spanish language and literature. And actually, the newly minted Dr. Lee Smith sold me his used Spanish textbooks for me to enter. I was first-year student, but I wrote a competency exam and started in second-year Spanish classes. So there's another connection there, Matt, that the 2 or the 3 of us have there. And
awesome.
In the 1990s, when you had an arts degree, there wasn't a lot of work in Canada, and I think there wasn't a lot of work, especially in Saskatchewan and Saskatchewan, where I was. So I went overseas to teach. I taught in Taiwan, as many newly minted arts graduates did, and I guess I developed through that and some other activities a real love of teaching and education. And so I did some more degrees and did some more teaching back in Canada. I taught English as a subsequent language in Quebec for a few years. I worked as a flight attendant. Yes, this scarf today is a nod to that, because at one point in my 20s, I was trilingual and I liked to travel. And then I settled in once I had my son 21 years ago. He's a student now at University of Saskatchewan. Settled down working in a regional college in rural Saskatchewan, and loved it, loved administrative work. And I loved turning the academic articles that I would read into practice through my work there as a coordinator of ESL, English as a subsequent language, and literacy facilitator. And I just sort of worked my way up, taking on new challenges, pretending I'm not scared of doing the next thing. And I'm currently the Dean of University Credit Sciences, Health and Human Services at Coast Mountain College in Northwest BC, Canada.
Awesome. And I just got to give you a lot of credit, both because, you know, I just sort of, I remember, you know, a water cooler or hallway conversation or whatever, to the extent that we both kind of had that in common, in as much as we started with arts degrees at a certain juncture. And like, yeah, you know, I had student loans that I hoped to pay off. So that got me off to South Korea, where I, you know, met Dr. Lee Smith at that point, but and then as well, just trying out sort of various parts of Canada, various sort of occupations and whatnot, and just sort of finding your way. I just, you know, I'm more really within the curricular and, you know, instructional design and technology and whatnot. So when I hear somebody like you, or I guess even like Lee talking at the previous episode about, you know, like the joy of administrative work, like, wow, the world needs more people like you, because sometimes you know, sometimes it seems like the weight of the role is very much upon some of those in the role, and you just think, man, you don't seem to necessarily be enjoying yourself with this. So, you know, for people who actually sort of come up from being an educator and, you know, this and that, you know, trying things out, occupying various roles, not being afraid to fail, or if you are, you know, just kind of powering through it. And yeah, just, I mean, good for you. I just think that all sounds rad. So just standing, you know, it's impressive, I think.
Thanks,
so
Matt.
I guess, yeah, well, totally. I mean, it's just, it's relatable on the other hand, but I have a good colleague back in Ontario from when I worked there, and we still have like every couple of months we have a Skype conversation, and we have this thing called, you know, where she just kind of tells me how it's going, and sometimes you may have heard of this, Kara. There's an issues of teaching while female. it's a different ball of wax. It's like it's a tougher thing. So
I've never taught as a man,
you know,
so I can't really compare.
It's just, you know, you get more like in terms of the whatever. There's more of the patriarchal. Yeah. Anyway, just so. Interview-like questions. This is why I've got the Google Doc here. So I guess just, but seriously though, when you sort of, we started out in the Facebook chat and you were kind of describing what your work involves. And I'll just put it in the quote marks here: innovative Canadian university professors as change leaders. Yeah. Radical. Would you like to just sort of maybe talk about the interest and or what led you to that particular sort of a topic or area?
Sure. So I have worked in 5 different post-secondary institutions in the last 15 years in Canada, in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. And I felt like I was noticing something about really exciting, innovative professors doing things across their tripartite roles. So in their teaching in the classroom, or in their research with the community, or in their service to the community or to the institution, that was not being talked about by official formal leaders in those same institutions. So when official formal leaders were talking about innovation, they were not bringing up these examples of all these professors. And I felt like this was a gap or a disconnect. And after mulling it over, finishing my master's, I thought, I think I would like to explore this more. Nobody else seems to be noticing, but it's really striking to me. It's really fascinating. And so I started my doctoral program. It's an EdD, so I continue to work while I continue to write and research. Yeah.
It's
I
grind.
have a full draft of my dissertation done, and I'm just working on edits. So ever closer to the finish line. But I
Awesome.
interviewed.
Congrats. Seriously, that's a major milestone. Like when you've reached the point when the body of it is just like, now you just have to, like, writing is like rewriting, really. But you got your however many thousand of words kind of in the bag. Your references are there. Like, seriously, just that's rad. Personally.
Yeah, feels good to have that body of work. Makes sense as a cohesive thing.
Yeah, it's got a beginning, middle, and end. And I mean, at my juncture within the Workland program, I mean, it was an awesome program. I felt very supported. I had awesome, supervisors, and just the whole way through really well. But because these programs require you to be working at the time, and you have personal commitments and professional commitments, I mean, that was the part that I found daunting, and just kind of negotiating all of that stuff just to get to the point where you can actually do your research and sort of get it done. That just is kind of a thing just to be credited in and of itself, right? So
yeah, it's a big thing.
Totally. So I guess then, I mean, if I can infer, you're talking about sort of 2 sort of different concepts of innovation. So do you then have sort of an operational sense of innovation that you advocate for? So, like, are you sort of trying to move practice in a certain direction, or are you trying to just kind of document existing practice? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I did a case study. I interviewed 11 professors, tripartite professors from Canadian universities in the spring of 2022. And I asked them about 10 questions. Some of those questions were focused on what kinds of collaborations they pursued. But the rest were about their understanding of leadership and their activities that could constitute innovation. So from that, I came up with a thematic analysis that resulted in various themes. So here are some things we can say about innovative professors in Canada. They're engaged in new value creation. We tend to think of new value creation as like entrepreneurialism, but it's often social in nature as well. Innovative professors are very collaborative, more than individualistic, although they do vary in terms of the number and size of the collaborations that they engage with. They really transcend singularities. This is something that came up in the literature before I did my interview, and my data sustained it. So if you are working in science, you may, as an innovative professor, engage in social science research or interdisciplinary kinds of projects. So you're not sticking to a singular methodology or singular discipline. They all, and this is no surprise, deploy the scientific and evidence-based methods in their practice across their tripartite activities. So even if they're doing service as part of a university committee, they're bringing that evidence-based training to what they might put forward or evolve. They really mobilize their capital. This is the idea of capital, and the professor was evolved by Pierre Bourdieu And he talked about professors inhabiting intellectual capital. Yes, we think about professors as intellectual leaders or thought leaders, but also cultural and social capital. And so they mobilize this wealth of capital, not to earn more money, not usually anyways, but to balance things out sort of socially. So they're always looking to use and advance social justice tenets and to kind of reform inequities or reform structural problems in Canadian systems in which they work. A couple more here. They connect to non-academic audiences. So we can't call you, or you won't call yourself an innovator if you're never leaving the lab and your work does not influence practice, or there's no other beneficiary outside of the academy. This was interesting and a surprise and not something I'd seen in the literature before. They lean into understanding and contributing towards grand challenges. So some of those grand challenges of our time, those sticky or wicked problems, indigenization or reconciliation in Canada is a big issue. Climate change or social justice, ecological justice, some of those big aspects, big problems that face society and the world. These innovative folks are the ones that will join the committee, lend their work, contribute time to kind of pulling them apart or making things better. And then finally, the innovative professors I talked to are all really deeply and passionately motivated to contribute to the greater good. They were not doing this for fame and fortune.
I'm just so impressed. First of all, you just even gonna just give us all that in the podcast, because sometimes people are like proprietary or like my book, you're not treating this like intellectual property. You're really just sort of like looking to bring this to the people, because I mean, clearly, kind of what you're in for. We're friends on Facebook. You've seen my kind of the vibe that this podcast has and where it came from. And you still, like, when I was like, does anybody want to kind of jump in? You just were one of the first people who, right? So I was, I just think it's very altruistic and kind, I guess, to put it out, that you're just kind of like, here you go, people on the internet. Here's a very significant summation of your research as yet to be defended. I mean, just good for you. Just putting it out there with confidence and owning it. That is just friggin' rad. First thoughts, it's cool. So I guess, first of all, having gone through that whole process and, checked in with these people and really done the coding and sort of gone through it, I guess, would you say then, in documenting these sort of attributes or characteristics, like, I guess, and because you're very much about sort of operationalizing knowledge into practice, what would you then see as sort of from, like, what practices could you see as extending from these lessons? Do you know what I mean? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm gathering what you're saying. So
just hypothetically, just kind of thinking aloud, from if you were to think like in terms of educational practices, administrative practices, teaching practices of whatever kind, you have these really high performing collaborative cohort, and they really disclosed a lot about kind of what makes them dynamic or innovative. So like if somebody who's like less dynamic or innovative was like, well, how could I be more like this person? I guess what kind of practices, or you can turn this in another direction. I guess I'm just sort of trying to think of, teacher tips, administrator tips, faculty tips.
Okay, my mind goes first to how do we hire and select from these people, and that's my perspective as an administrator, right?
Good.
So this is actually problematic because we usually have panels of existing faculty hiring new faculty. And we have based it on a couple of perhaps somewhat outdated ideas about a number of publications, a little bit of teaching experience. And actually the innovator is less likely to be, you know, first author on piles and piles of publications, because they are spending so much time on service work or collaboration. So you should see their name alongside other people's names, and not just sort of taking or occupying the authorial space on their own. And you know, I think we probably also can surface here that if you have a lot of stagnant or jaded faculty, they may not be the best positions to identify and bring on and be supportive of their innovative potential colleagues.
Stagnant or dated faculty. I just want that like on I want that on a t-shirt. I just like, you know, kind of for just when I'm out and about in the summer, just stagnant and dated faculty. That's just, sorry, just so hiring practices, HR practices. This is an insight into the administrative mind. I just, again, like my career path is just kind of thus far really not sort of gone to that. People are just sort of like, well, we'll have you doing this kind of curricular kind of gig, and it's cool. But, you know, when I see people taking quite a, you know, enlightened approach, a proactive approach to be, you know, so hiring practices, improved HR sort of profiles, I guess, because like, I mean, there are rubrics and such sometimes, right, with these things where like weighted attributes and schema. I mean, I guess they probably vary by institution and whatnot. So, I mean, I've never had even the opportunity as yet to sit in on a hiring committee, but it seems like it takes up a lot of time. I see my CEO doing interviews in my current thing. It's just like, you can spend a third of your week doing interviews for a position any given time. Is that not the case that you find with you, or?
I do spend a lot of my time on hiring committees in my current role. So yeah, I would say it is a bit of a preoccupation. And every institution does not need every faculty member to be an innovator. You maybe want, well, my research doesn't say how many you want, but maybe you want a couple, and then you want some of the people to hang on and maintain some of those traditional aspects of teaching, learning, and research. So if you wanted to, though, kind of select for innovators, this research will give you a couple of ways to do that, or to look for that. And maybe you don't want innovators, maybe they're too much trouble, and then you can opt out based on some of these criteria too.
You can like how to hire stagnant and dated faculty if the ratio is a little bit low, because you don't want to get people too riled up. I mean, God
exactly
knows. You might get banned from a website or something. Anyway, so I guess I'll just sort of say, since we're on the topic of publications, you just happen to sort of speak to some of, I found your most recent one because you very helpfully kind of ran it up on LinkedIn, and I was like, maybe or Facebook or both. The one yeah, but I was just like, there you go. It's so Tiala and yourself, two different institutions. I mean, would you like to just sort of talk about what went into that and how that sort of fits in with your research program?
Yeah, I'd love to tell that story. This is a wonderful story. Sylvia Tiala at the University of Wisconsin Stout leads the Teaching and Learning Center there, and we've been co-authors and collaborators on a couple of different things. And the hub, the connector of us and many other people, is Dr. John Willison. Dr. John Willison is a senior faculty member in the University of Adelaide in Australia. He is world renowned for his work on the Research Skill Development Framework for undergraduate research skills development. And there's a lot of variations of that he and a colleague, Carrie O'Regan, worked on, I think back in 1997, and it's been updated. One of the institutions I worked for, actually several institutions that I've worked for, have hosted him to come and talk to faculty about how to be or implement more research-based or project-based learning in undergraduate classrooms. And when he came to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, he told us that he did not want to stay in a hotel. He wanted to be billeted.
Oh.
And everybody around the table was sort of quiet, like, who does that? Who billets somebody they've never met? And it turns out I do. So my family offered to billet or to host Dr. John Willison, and it was like a master class in undergraduate research. I was doing my master's at the time, and he has been a huge supporter, I would say even an endorser of some of my career aspirations, connecting me to different people around the world. And everybody that he connects me to is so smart and generous. Because if you're just
so
smart,
this person's like a sort of mentor person to you, as well as being a connector, would you say?
yeah,
like a bit of both?
A little bit of both. You know, Malcolm Gladwell, like he uses that term, social connector. I really think of John Willison as a social connector. He brings great people in. He gives a lot of service back to different communities. For example,
Awesome.
in the South Pacific or Indigenous communities in Australia. Yeah, he's connecting people all of the time, and the people he connects to and with are wonderful, hands down, wonderful people. So yeah, Sylvia and I worked on that book chapter. John Willison has a new project planned. He invited me to come back. It just goes on and on.
Well, that's fantastic. So obviously then within this edited collection, so I guess then just in terms of, I was really, I appreciate, you know, sort of the story that
You're back, Matt. Can you try again?
yeah, that'll be just something for Camtasia. That's just the sketchy basement maritime internet just dropped us, but that's cool. So I guess I'll just then, you know, Camtasia, da, 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 and then so if you could then just perhaps you know, if there was any part of the process or content from, you know, your chapter that you wrote with this awesome collaborator, or for that matter, does that link to other research that you've done with this person?
Yeah, I would say the gist of my peer-reviewed academic publications, including book chapters, has been about undergraduate research. I was hired into the role of coordinating undergraduate research at the University of Saskatchewan. Well, gosh, 2013. And it's only very loosely related to my doctoral study, in the way that I did a lot of academic development in that work, getting instructors to think differently about teaching and learning and to connect their research and teaching. So my doctoral project sort of stemmed from some of those innovators that I saw in that work, but I do sort of publish and research in more than a single area.
Well, and that's fantastic. No, I mean, it's just, again, with these sort of professionally oriented programs where people kind of land in them after being, you know, within a career for a while. So, I mean, you've been sort of working in this particular space for quite a matter of time, and now, after being within the academic, you know, environment in various capacities, you're stepping into your doctoral study. I I was still actually within my first 5 years of being an educator when I went into the doctoral program. So I didn't have like a ton of any kind of other than just like a few conference presentations, you know. So I think that's just really awesome that you've sort of kept up an interest in that area throughout your career and contributing to other areas. So apart then from this area and your doctoral area, has there been like any other projects or professional kind of projects or just like initiatives that you kind of would be interested to speak of because they're cool?
I'm one of those people who thinks way too many things is cool. I think I'm a big advocate of faculty. One of the things that has come up in lots of literature and my research study as well is the workload is really heavy for faculty. It's not just in Canada, but it's everywhere. And there's a lot of pressure to publish as well as teach, as well as to take on additional activities. And while I don't want to support overworking people and the burnout that can come from that, I do get excited about a lot of different things. So if folks invite me to a project and I have an interest and I can learn from being a part of it and I can contribute, then I get involved. So one of the projects is World Class Day. This was started by an emeritus professor, Dr. David Parkinson at the University of Saskatchewan. He did a collaborative online international learning project with Dr. Payal C. Mukherjee in Delhi, India, and some other colleagues in the English department at the University of Saskatchewan. And we ended up starting somehow, you know how these conversations happen over lunch or the water cooler or walking across campus, that we would host students from around the world to present their undergraduate research in a way that didn't cost them any money. So there's no fees, no tuition or costs for students to apply. It's all volunteer based. And I've got collaborators in London, UK, in Indonesia, in Ecuador, and we meet once or twice a month across the year, and we put on this free symposium. It's so much work, but when I see those smiling faces in the middle of the dark Canadian winter from places beyond my imagination, and then we see the students present from Rwanda, from every part of the globe that we have somehow managed to convince to send students, it really just lights my heart up. We see tremendous hope, tremendous reason for optimism that undergraduate students are passionate about solving the world's problems in all corners of the globe. And it provides me with a huge sense of satisfaction. No pay. I don't get paid for that work, but the rewards are so generative. And I think that's connected to a lot of the work of the innovators that I spoke to. They form really stunning, deep relationships. One of the interviewees called them sister scholars. This group of women scholars that she had connected with from around the world through conferences or professional associations, and she considered them her kin, her academic kin. And so those relationships, I think, sustain a lot of us through the workload, through the burnout, through having to change institutions and having to move around. Matt, I know that's happened to you too. You have to move around to have a job sometimes and leave people you care about behind, and but you find new people and you can stay connected to those that you really value no matter where you are and where they are.
Well, I mean, that all just sounds rad. And I just am really sort of drawn in my sort of own kind of, personal dealings to people who just kind of are motivated about what they're doing. I mean, whatever you happen to do, I mean, just own it, like if you're going to be sort of in, like an entrepreneur, if you're going to be a retail, career, if you're going to be, I mean, my sister, you mentioned that you spent some time as a flight attendant. My sister is a career flight attendant with Air Canada, based in Vancouver. And I mean, she's been doing it for like 15 years at this point, and she's just, I mean, I think she's gonna just go out that way because she loves it. So it's I don't know how I'm bringing sorry, Sarah, if you're listening. Probably not, but I mean, I guess, it's like when you find the thing that lands for you, that resonates, and it's just, it's sort of like, it's kind of like with these podcasting kind of endeavors. I mean, that is definitely something that's ramped up for me since, in the absence of my kids, primarily, since, as you mentioned, about shifting locales for work and whatever. And for me, it's like, well, between this and the music one that I do, that kind of, and then it's like, that you're on to something if you spend a bunch of time at your job kind of doing teacher learning kind of stuff, and then you go home and then all you do is like more teacher learning stuff. And you get a little bit of sleep, and then you get up in the morning and you have to care about it, because otherwise you're out, right? So I think what you described is just such a, I get it. Just, the hours and hours going into a somewhat irrational enterprise, but then you get something at the very end of it in terms of a connection with people that just sort of brings it all out, right? So I do tend to ramble. I mean, you may know this. Just well, it's
Oh, I missed the first part of what you said. Can you ask again?
Would you like to? How do you want to talk about your your supervisors here? Because I was about to say, like with my supervisors, one of the things they put to me was, what do you want to be doing in 5 years, and how does this relate? So I guess first of all, I would just say I would invite you to sort of reflect on your experience with your supervisors, if you want to shout them out or not, and possibly any advice they may have given you that's kind of landed.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for that prompt, Matt. So my current supervisor is Dr. Marlon Simmons. He's an associate dean in the Workland School of Education, working with graduate students. He was an instructor in my master's program. I did an M.Ed also through University of Calgary, Workland. And he just really his instruction really meant a lot to me. He's a very intellectual person, in my opinion. And everything that he says gets me thinking and unthinking. So trying to keep up to him gets me thinking in ways that I have never thought before. And then unthinking things that I have assumed, or biases.
Love the unthinking. Love the unthinking.
Yeah. So at some point at the ISOTL conference of the International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, which happened in Calgary in 2017, I met him face to face. I had done my master's degree online. And in front of a group of people that he was presenting to, he called me out and said, Kara is going to be our doctoral student in the near future. And so it was. So I went back to Workland to do my doctorate degree in order to learn more from Dr. Marlon Simmons. He's a fantastic.
That's awesome.
You said you had really experienced a lot of support in that program, in the EdD program, and that's been my experience too. Dr. Simmons has seen me move across several provinces and into new roles. And as a single parent, that's not easy to keep up with a dissertation, and he's never impatient with me. He's always just encouraging me to find the next nugget to explore in terms of the research, in terms of the reach, in terms of the literature, what more is speaking to you, and how can you convey what you're thinking to whatever audience it may or may not reach. Yeah, he's been instrumental. And actually, as I come to the place where I'm editing and going to defend, I'm actually going to miss him. Like how how do people move past these really monumental academic relationships? I'm not sure, but I know he'll have other students coming his way because he's fantastic.
Well, that is awesome. And again, it's just the aspect of it where you've had an opportunity to learn from this person, collaborate with this person over 2 graduate degrees at this point. I just think that's a really a fine example of how good it really can be. And if you happen to kind of encounter such people in your life, right? That's awesome. Well, I mean, I know that you're at the end of your working day, and we're kind of winding down here. We've sort of gone through what I kind of had as far as pretty much any kind of scripted questions. I guess probably, Kara, I would just want to say thanks a lot for being here. I really, I just, I can't think of anybody more dynamic or just professional. So having you coming on here after leave and having you guys that know each other in that weird Saskatchewan way back in the day, I just think that's a really a nice 1-2 kind of thing in terms of one conversation followed by the next. So again, I would just like to say thanks for being here. Was there anything you wanted to speak to that we didn't get to cover here, or?
I will just close it out. This was really fun, Matt. Thanks for giving me the opportunity and for giving a forum for academics, new and young and old and jaded. And the other thing that I would like to leave is I gave the sort of thematic themes for my doctoral work, but I'm also working on a typology of the innovative professor, which I'm excited to be able to present in my dissertation as well. So there's parts that I'm really happy to share about, and I would invite any kind of conversations about that. But there is a sort of stay tuned piece as well that I'm still mapping out.
That is fantastic, and I am hoping that we'll be able to having have the show, have the time, whatever, that we can sort of hear back from you later about this stuff is what I was trying to get at there.
That sounds fun too. Thanks so much, Matt.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Kara. Appreciate it. And take care. Exactly. Literally from coast to coast. I'm going to end the recording now. Bye, everybody.